Nothing pains me more, well, a lot of things pain me about Toronto FC, but I don't think anything really pains me more than talking about a loss for Toronto FC away to Columbus versus the Columbus Crew. And unfortunately, everybody, that's what I'm going to have to talk about tonight. How you doing, everybody? Tim Drodge here once again. View from the South Stands, coming to you late Wednesday evening after TFC's most recent disappointment upon disappointment this season, of course, losing, as I stated off the top, 2-1 away to the Columbus Crew. A very short list of positives in that game. I had to confess I didn't see most of the first half. I work late in my job in the real world till 8 o'clock, and I had to boot it to the pub to see the end of the first half and the entirety of the second half. From what I'm told by my friends who were watching the game at the pub before I got there, looks like I didn't really miss too much in the first half. All I missed was a Torsten Frings yellow. I'll get the Frings in a second. And a fairly empty pub, which I'll get to in a couple of minutes as well. So getting back to that short list of positives, I think Darren O'D cares. He looked pissed off, particularly in that second half. He looked quite vexed when he, showed a little bit of the Brian Burke, Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment truculence, so to speak, when he stopped Columbus player Renteria in the second half. I think just out of frustration, and also to just send a message that you can't be taking liberties in the box against a defense with Darren O'D in it. Jeremy Hull, who surprisingly started in place of TFC Ironman Milos Kosic, actually looked fairly comfortable in net. Of course, he did concede 2 goals, but they weren't really goals that I think he could be blamed for. Frankly, the only time that Milos Kosic was rested this year, in retrospect, was the friendly game against Liverpool FC, and Hull was actually on trial at the time. So really this was the first time that Milos has had the night off, and I think he richly deserved it. I don't think there would have been a difference if he would have started tonight based on actually how it turned out. And frankly, other than some solid possession and pressure in the second half, maybe a good 10 or 15 minutes worth of said pressure and possession, that led, of course, to a TFC goal from Luis Silva, who's been looking slightly better over the last few weeks. That was pretty well where the positives ended. Decoy Williams, surprisingly, started for Toronto FC at centre back next to Darren O'D. He was brutally rusty and brutally slow. I thought Frings, Torsten Frings, TFC's captain, by the way, was supposed to be suspended for this game. And I do apologize for stating in the previous video that he was going to be suspended, when in actuality he had 4 yellow cards accumulated previous to tonight's game rather than 5. However, he did acquire a yellow card in the first half. From what I'm told, a professional foul, which means he is officially suspended for the Houston game on the weekend in Texas. He can fly back to Toronto if he wants. He can stay on the road with the team if he wants. It's up to him. But he's going to be well rested for the most important game, the only really important game of the season at home that's left for Toronto FC, which is next Tuesday's game, of course, on the 28th against Santos Laguna in the CONCACAF Champions League. A couple of things I want to talk about as well before I just get into the pub, Mariner, and something I think we should all start talking about on Facebook and Twitter over the coming weeks to send a message to this team, is how absolutely predictable this team has been looking offensively. It just seems to me that every time they being Toronto FC, get the ball in an offensive position, it almost seems to be like me, as a very casual observer of the game, who has hardly played the game, who doesn't understand the game at a high level the way that a Mariner would, or a TFC player would, or even somebody who's played the game professionally or semi-professionally or at a high amateur level can understand. It just seems to me, as a very, very casual observer, that the Reds are completely predictable offensively. You know what they're going to do. They're going to try to get the ball to their left back, to Morgan. He's going to try to whip in across. Sometimes it works. Most of the time it doesn't. And it just seems like 10, 15 seconds before anything happens offensively, the Reds are almost telegraphing what they're doing. Is that bad coaching? I don't know. Is it an apparent lack of talent? Probably. Is there any wing play from the midfield of note? Absolutely not. There hasn't been. I was actually mentioning tonight to one of my friends at the pub that it would have been that one of the biggest tragedies for Toronto FC over the last few years was Nicholas Lindsay last year actually potentially ending his career in an off-season snowmobile accident, just when he was starting to look like somebody who could make a difference on the wing for the Reds late in 2010. There he goes and potentially ruins his career. The Reds haven't had a winger, a pure winger, since Ronnie O'Brien, and they haven't really had as much creativity and guile, shall we say, from the midfield, I would argue, maybe since Amado Guevara when he left the team. Definitely they need to find a winger in the off-season. Definitely they need to try to find, whether it be through coaching, whether it be through set piece, management, or whatever the case may be, they need to try to find some creativity and guile, shall we say, through the middle of the park, because that's certainly not happening right now. Now, I mentioned Santos Laguna a couple of seconds ago. Obviously, that is the only meaningful game at home that's going to be left for Toronto FC between now and the end of the season. And they, by the way, defeated the Salvadorians, who we defeated 5-1 a few weeks ago. They beat them 5-0 last night away. God only knows what kind of a smackdown they're going to lay on Santos Laguna. Santos is going to lay upon them when they go back to Mexico in a few weeks. So obviously Toronto FC has to get a result. They have to get a win. A draw I don't think is going to do it. They have to get a win and hopefully get some sort of result, maybe a draw away, to possibly squeak through. Because obviously any hope of Santos Laguna stumbling against really the third best team in the group, out of the 3-team group right now, I think obviously that's wishful thinking. So we're going to talk more about the Champions League game in coming days. Now, I mentioned I saw the game, most of the game, at the pub tonight, one of the local pubs that the Toronto supporters groups go to. And there were more tumbleweeds there tonight than there were supporters. Obviously, it's a Wednesday, it's late on a Wednesday evening, and people have lives. I was working late. A lot of people work late. A lot of people, are very, very busy. It's the summertime. There's always going to be people that have other things to do, and that's fine. But I don't think I've ever seen that pub that empty ever for a Toronto FC match. I've seen that place absolutely rammed on a Tuesday. And tonight, tumbleweeds were rolling through. A lot of ambivalence is starting to actually sort of rear its head from the core support for Toronto FC. And I'm talking about people, I consider myself to be a core supporter. I blog about the team, I talk about the team, I try to evangelize about the team. I live and breathe the ups and downs of Toronto FC, and I know I'm not alone in that respect, but it certainly seems to be getting to be a bit of a smaller audience over recent months, and obviously that comes back to the results. One of the other things about the pub tonight that I wanted to relay to you that I think actually is something that I haven't addressed as of yet is a young man that I met was actually saying, hey, I've seen your videos, nice to talk to you, blah, blah, blah. And we were chatting and he asked me what my opinion was on Mariner. I said, well, I think Mariner needs to stay. And he was like, what? He needs to stay with these dreadful tactics? I said, we're beyond tactics right now, friend. We're actually well beyond tactics. This team is in serious danger of losing what relevance it has, and it's a tarnished sort of reputation that it has in the Toronto marketplace. But it's what relevance it does have is actually threatened by the results. And I don't think that throwing, and I don't think calling Mo's experience in New York before he came to Toronto real MLS experience. Paul Mariner is TFC's first truly MLS experienced head coach, blowing this team up right to the bare ass walls again in the off season. Again, just strikes me as a sign of insanity. What's this team done for 6 years now that hasn't worked so far? Well, blowing the team up every year. I think trying to find some shred of consistency in approach and in player personnel is the way that it works in Major League Soccer. Tactics be damned. I think you need to try and find a spine. You need to try to find a core of players that you can actually build around. The Reds are young. They've got some bad contracts that they've got to deal with, which I'll talk about in another post later on. But I think getting rid of Mariner right now would be absolutely insane. I think trying stability rather than instability for once, certainly worth a shot. It's something we haven't tried before. Now, I want to get to my last point before I clue this up. One of the other things that was talked about tonight in the pub was what's going to be happening next year with season tickets for Toronto FC. And I want to actually get this hashtag started on Twitter, and I thought about it tonight about what would be a realistic expectation for 2013. A rollback in prices should be what happens. And I'm going to go on the record as saying that right now. I think for 6 years we've been gouged, and I think rolling the prices back to 2009, 2010 prices would be a worthy gesture for long-suffering fans and customers of this team. But I don't see that happening. I don't think that Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment has it in them to do a price rollback for Toronto FC. They did it for the Toronto Raptors, but the Raptors are a significantly bigger piece of the pie with a significantly bigger overhead and a significantly bigger cost basis to run than Toronto FC. I really don't see it in the cards. What I do see as a possibility is a price freeze. And there is a precedent for that. It happened, of course, in 2010 in the uproar after Mo left, the 100 days between Mo and Aaron Winter, the Jurgen Klinsmann saga, etc. In that period of time, there was almost a rebellion among TFC supporters, and they led to a price freeze for 2011 and 2012. That price freeze is ending at the end of this season, but I think hashtag TFC price freeze 2013, TFC price freeze 2013 should be a hashtag that all of us should actually embrace. A rollback I don't think is a realistic expectation, even though it would be the right thing to do. I think we need to start the campaign right now for something realistic and something that the club should announce sooner rather than later, which is a price freeze for season ticket renewals for 2013. And I want you to join me in this campaign. Speaking of campaigns, the TFC campaign on the road woes continue. Back to Houston for a second time on Saturday. That'll be without, of course, Torsten Frings. The last time the Reds were there, of course, they had that barn burner where they coughed up the lead late and almost beat Houston in their new stadium. We'll see what happens on Saturday. And then, of course, we've got the big game, the playoff game for all intents and purposes against Santos Laguna on Tuesday. So thank you very much for watching. Have yourselves a great evening. And again, remember, TFC Price Freeze 2013. Let's get that hashtag moving on Twitter. Thank you and have a good evening. Cheers.